All right, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Thank you so much for joining us. We're gonna wait maybe 1 minute or two for more people to join. In the meantime, I'm just gonna show you, if you're new to Zoom, there's some options that you can use. Please remain muted until we reach the Q&A section, which is where we allow you to speak. We'll give you 2 minutes to speak once you use the raise hand option. In the meantime, you can use the chat to, introduce yourself, to say hi to your neighbors. You also have the closed caption option available at the bottom if you're using a desktop. This could be a little different if you're using a mobile phone or a tablet. Just also reminding you that this meeting is being recorded. I'm just gonna let more people join the meeting, but yeah, thank you so much for being part of this meeting tonight. We'll wait 1 more minute. Remember that if you, in the middle of the presentation, if you have a question, you can also ask your question in the chat section. And either we will read that at the end or we'll try to answer if that's possible. All right, we have more people joining, but yeah, I think we can go ahead and start. So I'm just gonna pass this along to Panini.
Thank you, Ricardo. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting. Hope you had a blessed Easter and relaxing weekend. This is Panini Chaudhry, and I'm the Senior Transportation Planner of DOMI and leading the Northside MoveForward PGH cluster. Before getting into the detail of the design, I just want to shed some light on our departmental goal. Our ultimate goal is to transform DOMI into an agile and humanistic department where the concept of human mobility will come first. We want to create a culture of human dignity in mobility. To achieve that, we have adopted 5 major goals. Ricardo, next slide, please. The first goal is no one dies traveling our city roads. We have corridors that are risky by topography and design. Sometimes there are human behaviors that influence severe incidents. As a department, we are working to make decisions that reduce this possibility of such occurrence to the maximum extent possible. Doesn't mean that we don't have any more crashes in our city. Probably not. We still will have to deal with crashes. But we are working to make sure that those crashes don't result in a fatality. The second goal that we have is every household in Pittsburgh can access fresh fruits and vegetables within 20 minutes travel of home without the requirement of private vehicle. Car ownership shouldn't be the key to success in this country. We just can't assume that everyone owns or drives a car. And if we want to ensure an equitable society, we need to ensure equitable mobility option first. We have to work from both sides, land use and transportation. And we are, as a department, working to ensure connectivity and accessibility for people of all ages and abilities in our corridors. The third goal is walking and biking are the most joyful mode of transportation for the shorter trips. When it comes to the walking, it will be less than 1 mile. And when it comes to biking, it's just 5 miles. Our department is working towards building more safe, comfortable, direct, well-connected, and attractive bike and pedestrian connections. And MoveForward PGH is one of the brainchild of that goal. Our fourth goal is no household should spend more than 45% of the household income to satisfy basic housing, transportation, and energy needs. We are a fairly affordable city at this moment, but the prices will go up and definitely the living costs will go up. But we are working toward a more affordable mobility options for our constituents, and that's why we are promoting more public transit, micro, and shared mobility options. The fifth and the last goal that we have is Pittsburgh Street and the right-of-way. They should reflect the value of our community. Our roads should represent who we are, kind, loving people who like to share their joy. Let's share our roads like the same way. Let's create a complete street, a street that represents sharing, social equity, and represent a next generation of transportation system. We go to the next slide, please. In 2020, Pittsburgh adopted the Bike Plus plan that lays out a future connected bikeway network building on a comprehensive community engagement process. This plan includes a roadmap for increasing bikeway connectivity citywide and supportive programs and policies that will help us to get there. MoveForward PGH builds on this outreach process, research, and network development. The Bike Plus plan focuses on the goal of increasing high quality bicycle connectivity to key destinations such as grocery stores, transit stores, schools, or civic centers. Next slide, please. MoveForward PGH is a partnership. The Department of Mobility and Infrastructure is leading the project, but cannot do this without our valuable partner, Bike PGH and Healthy Ride. We work together to engage communities throughout the MoveForward PGH campaign to install new bike-friendly connections throughout the city. For Northside in 2021, we have planned a total of 8 months of bike infrastructure, and we're going to present some of the designs today from there. Next slide, please. Here are some of the examples of the MoveForward project, the type of project that we are conducting across the city. Top left one, that's the one we took it from Southside Neighborway, where we installed speed hump and sharrows for better visibility of the cyclists and also traffic coming. The top right one, we have a bicycle specific wayfinding on the Southside Neighborway. The bottom right one that we have is like a two-way bike lane upgrade that we are working at this moment in the Nagler Run Boulevard. And the bottom left one is from Gap to the Point Bike Lane Connector, which is a nationally recognized project. Next slide, please. So we are taking on developing a citywide network through this MoveForward project, and we are doing it through our clusters. Here is an overview of the MoveForward PGH bicycle project schedules. We are in the launch 1 of the project, as you can see, and about to kick off the launch 2 within a couple of, sometimes around the mid-April this time. And you can see the neighborhoods that we chose for each of those launching. All projects will include around 12 weeks of a structured outreach and design process, and then it will follow up to the construction of those projects. Next slide, please. So in the very beginning of the process, we want to set up the expectation level of public outreach for our projects. That's why we followed the Department of City Planning's engagement guideline. Since most of the Northside projects that we have here are based on reallocation of available spaces without making major disruption in traffic, that's why we took the consult level of public outreach for most of this project. We also went through a 2-stage corridor prioritization process to identify the potential locations that community want. And today we will present them in the 3rd phase named design solicitation. After that, we will start collecting public comments again on these potential designs. But one thing, please note that to ensure community involvement, we made our engagement strategy as a continuous process. And if you are present today or get the survey tomorrow or attended in our past public engagement efforts for the Northside Phase 2, you are an active participant of all these projects. Next slide, please. A little bit about the pre-design survey stuff that we are conducting. For pre-design survey and corridor prioritization process, we first presented some rough corridors, potential corridors on February 2nd in the Northside Leadership Conference's Bike Ped Committee monthly meeting. And after that, we reached out around 20 Northside advocacy organizations like Perry Hilltop Fineview Citizen Council, Manchester Citizen Corporation, Brighton Heights Citizen Federation, Friends of Riverview Park, Allegheny West Civic Council, Perry Hilltop Citizen Councils. We also reached out 8 Northside faith-based institutions. We distributed over 8,000 postcards door to door, and we also put over 100 posters all over the Northside. We are also using various social networking platforms to reach out more people of the Northside and also the project-specific stakeholders also. Ricardo, next slide, please. A little bit on the pre-design public engagement findings. So we went through a 26 days pre-design outreach process to identify top concerns on our design corridors. As you can see there, Pennsylvania Avenue, Perrysville Avenue, and McClure Woods Run that we are gonna talk about today. We got something around 220 comments from 82 respondents. And the top concerns are also, as you can see, it's in the table. And you will see how we incorporated all these issues in our design that we will present shortly. Ricardo, next slide, please. So through this MoveForward PGH effort, we are not only ensuring safety for our bicyclists, but we are actually ensuring safety for all road users. Different big and mid-sized cities across the country already took this path and they found success. Our city is in an increasing trend of injury and fatal crashes of all mode of transportation. So if we want to make our roads safer for everyone, the time to act is now. And MoveForward PGH is one of the many ways city is working towards it. Ricardo, next slide, please. With that, I finished my part of the presentation, and now I will pass my baton to my municipal traffic engineer, Nick Ross. Thank you for sticking here, coming here today and listening to us. I hope I earned the privilege of your time. Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, as always, Panini. Welcome, everybody. I, again, am the Chief Traffic Engineer for the Department of Mobility Infrastructure. We are going to now discuss 3 specific projects as part of this meeting. Those projects are going to be on Pennsylvania Avenue, the Woods Run corridor, and the northern portion of Perrysville Avenue. So first of all, we are looking here at our MoveForward infrastructure map. There's a lot going on here. I think we appreciate that at this point as we've been developing all these projects. Key things to focus on here that we're going to talk about today, the Brighton Road corridor as the kind of the north-south connection through the western neighborhoods on the north side. 2 of our projects connect directly to this corridor to provide access, east-west access across our neighborhoods. Those projects are going to be the Pennsylvania Avenue project and the Woods Run project. I also want to note that the Northside community itself has developed their concept for what they call the Northside Bike Loop, which is essentially a way that all riders can access the North Shore trails from all parts of the neighborhoods up to and including Riverview Park. So the thick green line towards the bottom that kind of wraps around the river in the north side, that's our North Shore Trail system. The Woods Run corridor, along with finishing the East Street corridor, will act to connect this trail system in places in between for all folks that want to ride down to the trail or need to ride down to the trail for lack of car. So big picture stuff on that, just so everybody can kind of place themselves in what we're going to be talking about here. And now we can talk about projects specifically. Go ahead, Ricardo. Give one more. The first project we're going to talk about is Pennsylvania Avenue. This project is going to start at the western end at Manhattan Street and travel all the way to Brighton Road. Again, this is the east-west connection through called the lower to mid-Manchester neighborhood area to get over to Brighton Road. folks that understand, this area and live there kind of can appreciate that Allegheny Avenue splits Pennsylvania Ave into two pretty distinct, types of street. To the west, on the left of the screen, very residential houses on both sides of the street, high parking demand, lower traffic volumes and lower traffic speeds. To the right of Allegheny Avenue, or the east of Allegheny Avenue, we can appreciate and we understand the Northsiders. Pennsylvania's extremely wide streets, very little traffic demand, very little parking demand, and it's quite a bit different than the residential portion. So for the residential portion, we are proposing to handle this part as a neighborway. If you were at our last MoveForward meeting, we introduced the several other Manchester neighborways. Again, these are generally shared streets in terms of the cyclists, the bikers riding in the same lane as cars and motor vehicles. We aren't going to be removing any parking on this stretch, or proposing to remove any parking on the stretch or travel lanes, but use some traffic calming type elements to really make it a more comfortable street for all modes who ride it. Ricardo, go ahead and give me one more slide. Some of the features that we're including and proposing in our neighborways include improved wayfinding signage, so more pedestrian scale signage that helps somebody orient themselves on the street as a walker and a biker. Some updated pavement markings, so shared lane markings. Those are sharrows if folks are a little bit familiar with bike terms. These also include some pavement markings that help encourage drivers to slow down. Some intersection pavement markings at crosswalks that improve conditions for walkers. So just low cost things without removing parking or removing lanes that can help it a more comfortable neighborhood feel. And finally are some more intensive interventions such as speed humps that really have a larger and more appreciable effect at slowing traffic down. One of those features, next slide, Ricardo, are what we've successfully installed on 3 neighborways in the East End neighborhoods, and those are traffic circles. These are relatively new to Pittsburgh. We piloted the first ones that we piloted, meaning kind of put out some test cases on North Euclid Avenue last year. We've learned some lessons from those and have adjusted our designs to make them more appropriate for all users of streets. And now I've got those into the ground in permanent concrete with landscaping to come once the weather improves on 2 of those routes, with the 3rd on the way in May. So these are a neighborhood, so a slow street type of a scale that still allows all vehicles to traverse in and around them while not allowing them to blow through the intersection. So the goal here is one, yes, to help bikers, but this is really for all people that use these streets and are kind of experience some speed issues and some intersection issues by drivers, maybe not quite following stop signs and not quite following speed limits here. So this is really a traffic calming feature that we really expect to help all modes on the street, not just bikes. Go ahead, Ricardo. The other portion, the eastern portion of Pennsylvania Avenue, is proposed to have what we term as a road diet. All that simply means is taking the existing number of lanes and using some of that space for other means. How we're going to do that here is we're going to propose, or we are proposing, 1 driving lane in each direction. The volume of vehicles on the street do not support the need for 4 lanes here. And so there will be, drivers will be able to have plenty of capacity on just 1 lane in each direction. And there's no parking demand on the north side of the street. And so what that allows us to do is find space to add a dedicated bike lane in each direction with a small buffer that separates the cyclist from the driver. So the goal here is just to reduce the amount of space that the driver has without taking away too much from a needs perspective. Hopefully to reduce the speed of those drivers while providing plenty of dedicated space for the cyclist with what's left. We will maintain all legal parking on the south side of the street. So the side of the street that has some businesses there will have all the existing parking that they have today. reason we were able to fit those bike lanes again is to remove the parking, or really to take the curb lane on the north side of the street and reallocate that space to bike lanes. So in terms of what we're going to be looking for from feedback from everybody on these ones, by all means, any comment is valid. But in particular, I think we're looking for resident feedback on the neighborway portion. So the portion that won't have any parking removal, won't have any lane removal, but are going to be looking at using maybe some speed humps, maybe some traffic circles, some signage, some pavement markings to really help make it a calmer, more comfortable street. And so folks that are looking to provide comment on Pennsylvania Avenue, we would really like to hear your thoughts on some of those features. We do have a lot of slides to get through. I'll just say right off the bat. And so by all means, send your questions in chat or hold them on for the Q&A at the end. But with that, we are going to move on to our second route. Oh, sorry, Ricardo. These are our conceptual plans. So again, we take all these to our communities very, very, very early in the design process. So just enough to kind of give you an idea of what types of solutions we could propose here. And so this is just a very preliminary plan sketch. Shows Allegheny Avenue on the left side of the street and kind of what that bike lane would look like there. Parking removed on the north side, parking remains on the south side. Those dashed lines are the buffers for the bike lane that kind of provide a little bit of extra distance from vehicles. And otherwise, this is just a pretty simple street. Next page. And here's just the second half of that. Same situation as the first part, bike lane in each direction. No parking on the north side, but all parking to remain on the south side of the street. And with that, Ricardo, I think we can move into our next project. So this one that we're going to talk about now, the McClure Woods Run Corridor. This is another one I think I mentioned earlier of common in ongoing north side needs. This is one that is needed to connect down to the riverfront trails down by the old penitentiary, and then all the way up to Riverview Park towards the Mairdale entrance. Folks that are familiar with the area will note that it cuts off the Eckert Preble portion in and around the Alcosan plant. That would certainly be part of the full corridor and the full connection to the trail once it got developed. Those streets are really more, really probably going to be signage only types of projects in order to help orient the rider. And there's a number of really significant pavement issues on them as well. And so we wanted to cut it at McClure for purposes of this planning and design. So we will present here some options for that. Go ahead, Ricardo. So here's a little bit of data that we've collected. When we do all of these projects, we go out and collect as much data as we can. And for complete streets type projects like this, two extremely key factors are vehicle volume and vehicle speed. So the volume, the number of cars on a street, and the speed that they're going are the two main factors that correlate with the overall safety of a street for all modes. And so the higher the number of vehicles, the higher the speeds, the more opportunity for crashes to occur, people to run into one another, and the higher severity of those crashes when they do happen. The higher the speed of the vehicle is, the more severe the crash is going to be. So we took data at two locations here, and the results are shown on the screen. These were all pre-COVID times, and so we don't necessarily need to adjust for any factors that would result from more or less people on the streets there. So you can see we have between about 3,700 and 4,700 vehicles a day. Why that matters is because even though our speeds for the first two sections at A and B are relatively reasonable, and I say relatively, we certainly don't encourage anybody to speed and drive over the speed limit. But considering, unfortunately, what we see in many other parts of the neighborhood and across the city, these are relatively calm. But the number of vehicles means that there's going to be a lot that are competing with a cyclist as they use the same space in the same lane. And so that's where we look to then put in traffic calming features that really reduce the speeds to make it more comfortable and safe for all people on the street. Go ahead, Ricardo. Here is also the safety data and the safety analysis that we pulled. I'll give everybody a little bit of an opportunity to review this without necessarily going over it piece by piece. If you look at the map on the right-hand side, though, you can read this as the yellower a dot is, the higher number of crashes or the higher density of crashes in an area. So that one thing that we note here, when we apply this or when we match this up to our volume and speed data, it matches almost perfectly as you go along the route. So the higher the higher number of vehicles and the faster they go in an area, the greater number of crashes we see. So this helps us kind of orient ourselves and identify certain types of traffic calming features where they're needed most. One thing you'll note here, and comes as no surprise, a lot of the curves, the bends in the road are high crash frequency areas. Go ahead, Ricardo. Okay, so we got into planning out this corridor. We really decided to split it into two pieces based on the kind of existing conditions and some potential solutions to improve them. Those two sections are going to be from kind of McClure up to Brighton, and then from Brighton up to sort of the Mairdale entrance up to the park. Go ahead, Ricardo. For what we're calling section A, the beginning piece, that will more or less take you from kind of Chateau area, down towards Alcosan up to Brighton Road in the existing conditions. So what's out there right now, 30 feet curb to curb, parking on both sides. But if you look at the typical section below, that kind of describes how that section, how the street works. 8-foot driving lanes is too narrow, is narrower than we would ever design a lane. And so having parking on both sides of the street more or less requires drivers to sort of share whatever remaining space is in the middle. This is why you see a lot of parking on sidewalks, up on sidewalks. When we allow parking on both sides on narrow streets like this, drivers unfortunately oftentimes ignore those cues and still drive fast and end up clipping mirrors and doing things that make the people parking cars want to move further out of the way. So this is what our existing section is. We are not proposing right now to remove any parking on the street, but we are going to walk through a couple options that we can present that look at what we could do if we did remove one side of parking. Go ahead. So as a potential condition for this first section, the north side of the street has far fewer homes and businesses on it than the south side. And because of that, when we did our parking surveys, we saw a significantly lower number, almost no parking utilization on that northern side of the street. So if we were to remove parking on one side in order to provide additional space for other modes on the street, that would be the direction that we would be looking to take out. What we can do with that space in this option, we proposed a single bike lane going in the, I'll call it the Riverview Park direction. So those folks that are familiar with riding this route will know that generally, from the trail up to Riverview, it's a grade, it's an increasing grade. It's really steep only towards the park, but even through here, there's just enough of casual grade that it, kind of slows you down a little bit. And the slower, a cyclist is riding, the more of a conflict that's going to create with vehicles. Conflicts create safety problems. So in this case, we would propose to put a bike lane in that uphill direction, so sort of towards the park direction, and then a shared lane with the vehicles in the opposite direction. You'll note here, though, that we still only have about 9-foot travel lanes here. So this is, this is still a pretty tight section. And why one of the reasons we are not outright proposing to remove parking in this location. Go ahead to the next slide. Another potential option here is again to remove the parking lane along the north side of the street. But instead of then keeping the two driving lanes narrow and adding a bike lane, we just widen them out to more appropriate width and make them a shared lane condition in each direction. This effectively is what you ride out there today, since there is so little parking along that north side of the street. Vehicles most often just use whatever space is remaining between that curb and the parked cars on the south side as the two lanes of driving, and cyclists sort of share that space in each direction with them. Moving on to the next slide, Ricardo. Lastly, with our option C is more of what we would term a traffic calming specific option. So this would use the same exact existing typical section. So same 30 feet, parking lanes on both sides with the more shared space in the middle for the two driving lanes. These would also be shared routes. So cyclists would ride in lane with the drivers in each direction. And again, so function very similarly to how it does now, exactly as it does now. But then we would also take a step and add some speed control devices. Here on this next slide, we are showing what a speed hump scheme would look like or could look like for the stretch. So Ricardo, if you flip us through. This is not by any means a final plan of what a speed hump project would look like here, but we generally like to space our speed humps between 300 and 400 feet apart from one another. Research shows that the spacing is effective at consistently controlling speed on a route. And the point here would be to keep all the existing parking, keep all the existing driving, but just better better control the speed of drivers through the section that is being shared with cyclists. As part of this, we would also be looking to do the same types of signing and pavement marking upgrades. So, better wayfinding, shared lane markings, maybe pavement bump outs and high visibility crosswalks at intersections to help pedestrians. Really, any kind of low cost, low impact things that we could do to make it a safer, more comfortable route. Next slide, Ricardo. So the next section from Brighton Road, this is really going to be for Brighton Road all the way up to Mairdale or up to the park. But we are breaking this out a little bit as well. The first section here up to Rodney Street, we appreciate has a fair amount of parking demand, and parking is present on both sides of the street. So our proposal is not proposing to remove any of that parking. However, if the community would come together and decide that in that first section, there is enough parking on the south side of the street to handle all the parking on the north side of the street as well, and would like to have the bike lane option there, we could also look at then connecting that and extending that past Brighton Road through this section here. So that's not a proposal from DOMI right now, but this is something that we want to make sure that the community understands is certainly a possibility if there is a need and there is an interest for additional bike infrastructure, that could be done here as well. Next slide, Ricardo. As is now, though, we are similar to the last option on the first section. We would propose mostly traffic calming type upgrades through this stretch. So keeping the same parking and the same driving lanes, and simply adding speed humps or other types of traffic calming features that would work to control speeds, lower them back down to at and below the posted speed limit, while upgrading intersections and curves and other features that could use better pavement markings. Go ahead, Ricardo. One of the high crash location areas along this corridor that we would look to do some traffic calming and safety improvements is the intersection with Central Avenue. Folks that are familiar with the neighborhood will know this is kind of a wonky intersection there. We would look to use just simple materials, sign pavement markings, to better delineate the path of travel for vehicles as you come through this intersection. This wouldn't remove parking in any appreciable sense, but simply better orient folks as they travel through and provide a little bit better operation for not only vehicles, but then cyclists and pedestrians as they're traveling through here as well. Ricardo? Okay, then. The second part of this section is from Rodney up to Mairdale, and this is the stretch, for those familiar, that borders the park on the right-hand side. So south side of the street, right-hand side as you're coming from Brighton Road up to the park. Starting here, there is no development at all on the right-hand side of the street. Even though there is parking allowed here, it still puts us into this situation where, for one, it's almost it's very lightly used, if at all, and then also kind of creates a situation where we have very narrow driving lanes there as well. So, Ricardo, onto our proposal. Here, we would look to simply add a bike lane in that uphill direction. So on the side of the street with very little parking, if any, right now, that would be converted into a bike lane. This is also the steepest part of that ride up to the park. If any folks can are familiar with that, and so this would help get cyclists out of that lane of driving. Make it a little bit less conflicting for both the cyclist and the driver. And then in the downhill direction, we would have a shared lane with drivers so that the parking could be maintained all along that side of the street where the parking demand does exist right now. Ricardo, go ahead. And with that, that'll get us to our last project. So this is our last project to discuss on this call before we get to questions. It's also our longest and our most complicated. Perrysville Avenue is a street that has been identified as a key part of the Northside Network by both our Bike Plus plan and also from years of coordination and complaints we hear from Northside residents. We also appreciate here, though, that this is a very diverse corridor with a lot of different needs as you go from one end to the next. Because of that, we've again taken an approach at breaking out the street by sections and that's more or less based on what is most appropriate from the land use perspective. So what types of houses, businesses, development are adjacent to the street as you go along it. I will say here, section A and C, for folks that are familiar, they're much more residential. Section B is bordered by the park. And so there are less demands for things like parking, driveways, intersections through that section. The other thing I'll note here is that the city of Pittsburgh, so us giving this presentation here now, we only own from from North Charles up to Marshall Avenue. From Marshall up to Mairdale is owned and maintained by PennDOT. PennDOT has, I'll say, fairly significantly different, types of things that they'll allow done to a street in terms of what we would call traffic calming features or vertical elements. And so what we're able to do is on this section is fairly well controlled by what our partners at PennDOT will approve here. So we can get right into the sections. Ricardo? Oh, sorry. First of all, to review some of the data collection for this corridor. So first and foremost, the volume and speed of vehicles. This section or this slide on the left looks at speed across the day. I'll remind everybody that this is a 25-mile-an-hour posted speed limit on the street. So you can see that from the beginning to the end is considerably above what our posted speed limit is here. This is where we are going to be looking to, we are kind of using this data to look at where our speeding issues are the greatest and where there is the greatest need for some sort of traffic calming intervention. You can see as you read through the area that is I guess, under DOMI control, under city control in section A, also happens to be the slowest section, with speeds increasing greatly as we move along the route. Next section, please. We also did a parking utilization analysis for this entire corridor, again, broken up into our sections as we have them laid out. How we conducted this parking utilization study, we went on 2 days, a weekend, which was Sunday, March 14th, and a weekday, Monday, March 15th. We had staffers walk the entire corridor at each time and count the number of vehicles parked in each section on the street at that time. In order to calculate how much of that parking was then utilized, we take and measure the entire length of legal parking on that section. So that factors in what the state mandates is not legal parking around intersections and crosswalks. So we take the length of legal parking, then we divide it by the average length of a parallel parking space, which is 22 feet. So that gets us the total number of parking spaces that are available in that section. Then we simply divide that by the number of cars we counted using the parking in that section to determine the utilization. The take home here is really just verifying what we kind of understood as a department and how our neighbors use the street in general. Southern section and the northern section have higher parking demand, while that middle section has very, 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 very little parking. Next slide. Also, looked at our performed a safety study for this stretch, looking at the number and severity of crashes. Again, similar to the Woods Run corridor, we could see as volume and speed of vehicles increase, we get more intense and dense crash locations. You'll also note here that, again, we see a high number occurring around the bends or the curves in the road as we travel. Go ahead, Ricardo. So what we're going to do here, we have had our consultant put together a conceptual plan for all 3 sections of Perrysville Avenue. We are going to walk through some of the highlights of those sections and just give folks a little bit of a preview or of an understanding of what types of treatments and plans that we would be proposing in this area. So starting down at Charles Street, the southern end. Again, this is our section A where we are not proposing to remove any parking or change the vehicular operation of the street. So here we will be looking to do some shared lane pavement markings, some high visibility crosswalks in order to kind of improve comfort of the street. Go ahead, Ricardo. Moving further northward, we have our first bus stop crossing. This is next to the, I believe it's a senior housing center on the left-hand side of the street if you're going northward. Here we're looking to increase the visibility and safety of this crosswalk with some high visibility crosswalks, shared lane markings, and also some painted bump outs that discourage parking where none should be occurring due to the proximity to crosswalk and intersection. So again, this isn't taking away any legal parking, but will hopefully help to control speed of vehicles a little bit and improve the visibility of walkers trying to cross from one side or the other. Ricardo? Our next location occurs just a little bit northward on the street at our next bus stop. This is in a tangent section, so a straight section that leads into that last big curve. We would look to control speeds here with what we call a splitter island. And so all this simply does is improve the crosswalk with high visibility markings, and then just forces drivers to kind of move away from the center line a little bit as they approach. All that does is kind of gets their attention, forces them to slow down a little bit to negotiate the jog in the lane, and then also provides a buffer in the middle for a pedestrian should they have started on their path and encounter a driver that is not yielding to them in the crosswalk. Go ahead, Ricardo. Section 3, just further northward at the next intersection, similar to the first proposal that we had. This is going to be marking out painted bump outs at the locations where their parking is not legal right now, help improve visibility of the crosswalk, while putting in the high visibility crosswalk markings there to once again increase comfort for walkers and also hopefully slow driving speeds down some. Ricardo. Next location is the intersection of Marshall Avenue. This is very similar to the previous locations in that we are just adding bump outs to increase sight distance and visibility, while also sort of narrowing the field of vision for the driver in order to slow speeds down. Then also here upgrading to high visibility crosswalks. This is now out of the section that is city owned and also into, or I should say right on the edge of the section B at Marshall Road, where we see our parking utilization drop significantly and the ability to open up some space within the street for some potential bike lanes. And so how we are proposing to achieve full bike lanes, dedicated bike lanes in this section, is to remove the parking along the park side of the street. So again, we saw very, very little utilization, almost actually zero utilization at all along the park side and very little along the neighborhood side as well. This is a section that is mostly very steep up to homes on the right-hand side of the street as you're going northward. We understand most folks do park off-street through that section. However, instead of removing all parking, we are able to get the dedicated lanes in by just removing parking along the park side, where none is really occurring right now, and in that way, able to get a dedicated bike lane in both directions. Ricardo. Coming up to Delaware Avenue, so this is the first big curve along this section B. This is the section that we're also seeing our speeds escalate significantly above the posted speed limit in the neighborhood of 35 miles an hour, so a 10-mile-an-hour increase. We're looking to do some additional types of traffic calming elements through here. Two of those, one, the speed minder type signs. Generally as a department, we really look to encourage better driving behavior through what we term to be self-enforcing design. So certain types of design features that really force a driver to slow down or encourage them to slow down without having to be told to do so. So these are the types of features like the speed humps and the pavement markings that really help assist slowing vehicles down. Additionally, though, we have included the speed minder type signs in a few locations across the city and would be amenable to including those in a few key areas on this section of Perrysville as well. Also, what we have shown here are what we have started using on some of our traffic calming projects, and those are called transverse pavement markings. So they're on the right hand view, you see the pavement markings that kind of cross the full lane. Those are what we call transverse pavement markings. Next slide will show a little bit more detail what those look like. So all this is a pavement marking, but it's basically a 6-inch pavement marking on top of an 8-inch pavement marking. So what that does is it should be 4-inch pavement marking on top of a 6-inch pavement marking. So what that does is basically just create a very, very, very slight raised portion above the pavement. And so as the vehicle goes over that section, you can feel that vibration, you can feel that as the driver, but it doesn't have the very deep grooves that create excessive noise of a rumble strip. So we don't like these. These are very, very different from a rumble strip, but it effectively gives the same cue to the driver in that it induces them to take more notes of their behavior and their speed and hopefully encourage them to slow down a little bit. So we're going to look to propose these before each curve along this section. So we put 2 of them 100 feet apart, one 100 feet before the curve and one right at the curve. We've already used this once in the city on Maytide Street in the Carrick neighborhood, so sort of the South Hills of Pittsburgh. Maytide Street was a traffic calming project we did last year. We saw excessive speeding on Maytide. On Maytide, we saw top speeds over 100 miles an hour. If you would, and unfortunately, that's not the only street where we measured speeds that high. And we found that these pavement markings have, along with speed humps, have greatly reduced speeds. And we have not gotten any complaints from residents on either side of the street of noise or any sort of excessive vibration from them as well. So we're going to be looking to use these on some of our MoveForward projects this year. And the hope is that they have the same effect. Go ahead, Ricardo. Getting into the curve sections, you'll note that on 2 of the curves where we are experiencing high crashes, we are on the curve only looking to also take the parking on the north side of the street, and so that we can add a buffer into this section. Again, this is primarily due to the increased number of crashes we see here, along with the low utilization of parking and the ability of people to park off-street. So what we would do here is simply add in one of those straight buffers that we talked about on the Pennsylvania Avenue project in order to give some additional space between the bike lane and the driving lane while working to reduce the amount of space that the driver sees as they're driving in hopes of inducing them to slow down as they go through this area. So you'll see the transverse pavement markings here, and then the bike buffers and the lane narrowing in order to hopefully effectively calm traffic down to more appropriate speeds through here. Next slide, Ricardo. And then that same thing applies to the next curve just north of that one. Again, low parking demand, high availability of off-street parking, and high numbers of crashes here is why we would be proposing to do a little bit of that additional safety work to buffer the bike lane. Ricardo. Last curve is heading up into our section C, which is back to a shared lane section. And so, speaking to the increase in parking as we go along the corridor, we will not be adding the buffer in here, but we will be proposing to use the transverse pavement markings to slow down vehicles, and then also we will carry the dedicated bike lanes right to the edge of the screen here. Go ahead, Ricardo. And that comes in right to the interface between sections C and D. So you'll see here, this is where we drop our bike lanes so that we could come back to our shared lane section that maintains all existing parking, all existing travel lanes. And again, these are just some painted bump outs, some high visibility crosswalk markings, some lane markings that will hopefully work to slow speeds and calm traffic through those areas. Ricardo? Another location at Dunlap Street of some daylighting of the corners in high visibility crosswalks. Ricardo? And then as we approach, as we're getting to, approaching the high school and into the 5 Points intersection, the last real problem area that we see from a crash cluster is right at this curve. We're predicting that, at least in the southbound direction, that is occurring a lot because drivers are picking up speed as they enter into that curve. One of our traffic calming measures, low cost, low impact traffic calming measures are what are called these splitter islands. And so to the right of the screen there, you'll see that this is similar to the crossing improvement at the southern end of the project, but simply works to force drivers to adjust their path and slow them down so we get to more appropriate speeds before we get to that curve. Ricardo? And finally, we get up to the 5 Points intersection. This is, again, just going to be shared lane marking, so maintaining all existing parking and driving lanes, and then just using some painted bump outs to what we term daylight, so increase sight distance or visibility at those intersections. And this is an older aerial image, but the crosswalks here have already been upgraded to be high visibility type. Ricardo?
All right.
And that's it. So I know we have a number of questions. I appreciate everybody's patience as we kind of powered through there, but Ricardo, if you want to, or Erock, if you want to start walking us through some of the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, we are gonna remind everybody that you can use the raise hand option, and then we call your name and you'll have 2 minutes to ask a question. We have one person raising their hand, but I see that we also have a lot of questions in the chat. So I'll pass it to Eric for maybe the first question from the chat.
Sounds good, thanks. Hi, I'm Eric Bohr. I'm helping out with this. I work for Bike Pittsburgh. So Nick, the first question is from Mark. The question is, how are all the small traffic circles constructed? Is the existing roadway left intact and the circle just sits on top, facilitating easy install and easy removal?
Great question. We do remove the pavement of these. So in the final traffic circles, we would propose to landscape them. So so low height, so they don't present sort of a site obstruction, but some plantings and some some flowery type things that really improve the quality of life and the visibility of the street. So in order to plant those, we do need to take out the pavement, and so those roots can take hold. In locations where we might want to trial the circles, if there's tight streets, we have done them with just the paint and the bollards for the first year, while we adjusted some spacing or some size in case there were any conflicts. If there were concerns, we could do that. It's possible that we could do that in other locations, but in general, the final traffic circles do remove the roadway underneath of them.
Thanks for that. We have a raised hand from Liz. Liz, please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That was a really great presentation. I live on Watson, so off of Perrysville, and I did not realize that portion was under PennDOT's jurisdiction. So that's that kind of limits you, I know. I put a few comments in the chat. The intersection from at Perrysville and Kennedy is a daycare drop-off, and so putting a no parking zone there is not going to, people need a place to drop off their kids, and it gets pretty busy. And then I put a comment about, could we put a crosswalk at the south entrance of Watson across Perrysville? Those bus stops are pretty heavily used there, and there are school buses that stop there, and we don't have a crosswalk there at all. And then my last one is that Venture Street intersection at the northern end of Watson. About over a year, I think pre-pandemic, they put a stop sign in there for the left turn only, but I'm going to guess about 10% of cars still stop, even if they're going straight. And it's really dangerous because they're coming down that hill and the car behind them is not expecting them to stop, but then they do stop. So I know that it's under PennDOT's control, but if there's anything you guys can do to make that safer. Also, the driving lane goes right against the sidewalk, right at that curve. And so if kids are playing on the edge of that sidewalk, cars are basically sideswiping them. And that's a school bus stop in normal times, not COVID times. And there's just a lot of families that try to cross at that intersection. And I've had to leave a child's bike in the middle of the intersection to whisk. It's very dangerous still. So I understand that it's under PennDOT's control and there's only so much you can do, but I just want to, if anybody could take another look at that intersection, it would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Liz. Those are great comments. Ricardo and Eric, can we make sure we get those written down so that we can address those? Liz, I'm going to have to take them back to our design team to get you specific answers, but very, very, very well said. And I can imagine that we couldn't make those adjustments where needed.
Yeah,
Thank
totally.
you.
Yeah, we'll document them. Thanks for that. So yeah, I guess oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to clarify, hopefully for everybody, that we do work well with our PennDOT partners. There are just certain elements, as I mentioned before, mostly just sort of the flex posts and the speed humps type things that they just aren't quite comfortable using on their streets yet. And so, we work with them well on other routes and can, try to find ways around those and other things that can kind of have a similar effect. But when we're talking about what isn't going to be likely involved in that section, that's really what we're getting after. So thanks for that, Liz. Cardo?
All right. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Oh, yeah. So I have a question from Robin. Is there anything that can be done about the unused streetcar tracks that run across Pennsylvania Avenue near Brighton Road?
Oh, Robin, there and everywhere else in the city, right? Unfortunately, no. Our MoveForward program is really not set up to take on big, I'll say expensive type repairs or replacements like that. So no, we don't have anything planned at that location.
Thank you.
Okay, and then
Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. Same. Robin, also just to follow up, is what will be the deciding factor on Eckert Street to Riverview route? On the Eckert Street to Riverview route, though possibly not possible, I'd like to see a combination of speed humps and bike lanes.
Sure. So Robin, that's going to really depend on the kind of feedback we get from this in our subsequent meetings. If this is a location where we can get community support to kind of, remove that very lightly used parking, we would certainly be willing to look into that further. It's really going to probably come down to the kind of feedback we get from the local neighborhoods, and as well as folks like you who I know ride through quite a bit in terms of how much that's needed.
All right, thanks for that. Let's. We have another raised hand. William, please unmute yourself.
Hey, Phil.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Not too bad. I didn't see you there, or else I would have introduced you.
No, that's okay. I kind of snuck in there, was listening to everything, but as you were saying about your PennDOT partners and everything, I mean, I definitely say that we have a lot of interest in the project that you guys are proposing out here. Really look forward to some of the things that you guys are proposing along this corridor to try and help increase safety along there. And we definitely look forward to working with you as we try and together and develop some kind of improvement along there for bike and ped facilities. I was going to ask if you could share those sketches with us that you guys have, at least the preliminary ones, so we kind of take a look at them to kind of, as you go back to your design team with some of the things that come out of this meeting, we can try and follow up with you as well to, keep the ball rolling as you guys progress through your project. So we do look forward to working with you on this.
Thanks for that, Bill. And I'll also mention that PennDOT is also a big reason why this project exists right now in general, since they will be repaving the street this year. That's correct, right, Bill?
I know the limits got adjusted for Perrysville. I don't know if we're going all the way through now. I think with some of the changes and possible center line joints and things like that, it was hard to kind of get that figured out if it would all line up right, being that we were kind of under the gun to get it out. So I know that there was some change to the limits. I just don't remember where they stopped at.
Sure. I won't commit you to the whole thing then, but this was an opportunity.
Yeah, I see one too many projects in a day, so it's kind of hard to remember where everything starts and stops, to be honest with you. So
absolutely,
I wish I did remember off the top of my head, but we'll work with you guys on that as well. So
excellent. So this is just so that we don't go in and restripe something and PennDOT comes in and repaves it a year later. We're just making sure we coordinate with our partners there to make sure it's one-stop shop for everybody. So thanks for that, Bill. Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, not a problem. And I'll just look forward to seeing those sketches for us to get some comments to you guys on.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, William. Eric.
Yeah. So there's a question about the bus stops near the Steelworkers Towers, the two bus stops between LZ and Pusey. The question is that the best and safest crossing for the senior high-rise? Bus stops can and should be moved when they're unsafe.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last part, Eric?
Well, the last part is more of a comment. Bus stops can and should be moved when they're unsafe. And so the question is that the best place for the crossing? And I guess general question about bus stops.
No, that's great. So when we review all MoveForward projects that are on transit routes, such as this one, we do review with the Port Authority. DOMI won't, DOMI would not be in the market to move a bus stop without Port Authority's approval. But this is certainly a comment that we could take to them and see if they have any plans themselves or if they would be interested and trying to find a better spot for that.
All right, now a question from Mark Masterson. Are you doing anything north of east slash Mairdale slash Baytree, specifically any crosswalk improvements around that intersection? It's like the Wild West there. There's a connection to bike lanes at Mairdale and east as well. Will there be signage from those lanes onto Perrysville? So I guess there's a two-parter, sorry.
Sure, no, that's fine. Yeah, you know what? I don't believe we have anything proposed right now, but sure, this is, yeah, it probably could use some help to kind of tie everything together. So I'll get that comment back to our consultant.
Okay, the next one, could the intersection at Kennedy be improved by moving the bus stops to the far side versus the existing near side stops? Might help alleviate the issue at the daycare and increase safety in general.
Sure. You know, certainly another Port Authority comment that we could take to them, definitely.
Okay. And then so far, this is the last question that I have in the chat. So any opportunity put in calming measures for Baytree Street and East Street, both 25-mile-per-hour roads with bus stops and bike access to the river trails. People fly up and down the roads. Baytree is much narrower and folks park on the sidewalks. I'd love to see a one-way road with parking on both sides on Baytree.
Sure. So Megan, that's not part of those streets aren't part of our MoveForward program, but we have had traffic calming program applications for both. I believe you might know you might remember that we put speed humps on Venture, I believe, last year, and both Chateau both Baytree and East certainly have very similar issues. So we have not approved all of our traffic calming projects yet this year, but those are two that are still very much on the list to be included. So not part of this project or this program, but another one in our traffic bureau that we're very much analyzing right now.
Okay, I got another one. The pavement issues you mentioned at the base of Eckert by Chateau are severe and seem dangerous to cyclists, especially as traffic seems faster in the transition area. Will this be addressed later? So the pavement issues along that route.
Mark, I'll be honest. The reason that the main reason we haven't included those in the MoveForward program right now is mostly because of that pavement condition. We're working to encourage, strongly encourage, that those get repaved. I do not have the final paving list available yet, and so, but I could say that we are strongly advocating for that entire stretch, especially under the railroad there. To get repaved fully, and we're going to wait to do so before we put any type of pavement markings down there.
Sounds good. Thank you for that. We have another question, another raised hand. Lise, please unmute yourself again.
Sorry, me again.
No.
Could you flip back to the drawing of the Venture Street intersection? I think it was number 7. I just wanted to see the crosswalks.
This one?
Oh, maybe it was. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you were there. So the crosswalk there at Venture Street, would it be possible to move it south to the other side of Watson? Only because if you're trying to cross there, the people are coming down the hill and around a curve to that stop sign, and they just don't have as much time to see you. I don't know if there could be some crosswalk maneuvering there, because most people don't cross there anyway.
No, that's great, Liz. That's great feedback. I think that we could definitely take that back to the consultant and have them change that. So right now it's a marked crosswalk on that north side, but you're saying that most the people that do cross there are already crossing on the more southern side, even though there isn't a crosswalk. Is that correct?
Yeah, because it flattens out a little bit there, and the cars coming around the curve have more time to see you.
Sure.
And so it feels safer, I think.
Okay, sure. If nothing else, Liz, we might be able to just add another curb ramp and short them both, to be honest with you. We like to do that wherever it's feasible. and doesn't create other some other issues. So we can certainly take that back to the consultant as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I have another question from the chat. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, something happened to my computer. With the development of the 5 Points Business District happening, going further north, will more be done with the bike lanes, pedestrian crossings, etc., as that develops between Mairdale and Bascom?
Greg, we could certainly keep that as an option. Right now, though, we have no plans to extend the bike lane north on Perrysville any further than we have it right now.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have right now. Remember to use the raise hand option if you want to have 2 minutes to use the mic, or if you have any other questions that you want to ask, you can also do that on the chat.
And I know we kind of ran through a lot of those slides. There was a lot of information there. So Ricardo, I believe we're going to post all this and make it available for everybody to review again. And we can certainly be back out for some updates if need be. Looks like we got one more coming in. Can left turn lane onto Venture from Perrysville be eliminated? That's one, Mark, that we could take a more of a look at. I wouldn't be able to answer that off the top of my head here, but as we're looking at operations, we could certainly take a look.
Yeah.
And Eric and Ricardo are going to work to make sure that all these chat comments are also then taken as official comments, so that us DOMI folks don't have to rely on me to remember everybody's here. So everything that you type in the chat and you've asked will be officially recorded as well.
Yeah, just with that, this meeting is being recorded and it will be shared with you as soon as it's posted online. Also, the slides of this presentation will also be available at our website as soon as I send you that email with the video as well.
And I just wanted to mention that I dropped a link in the chat. The city has an engaged PGH site. The link is at the bottom there, and you can also leave comments there as well.
I see
Oh, and we had one more question. One more question. Could we add a stop sign on Eckert at New Beaver? From Jerry.
Jerry, help me out. What are we calling New Beaver there? Just like still on the Chateau side? I don't believe that we're doing any work. I guess we'll call it on the Chateau side of the railroad. But we can at least look there to perform a stop sign audit and see what that looks like.
That's all the questions I have in the chat.
Okay. And I see a couple other comments coming through. We'll be sure to record those in there as well. Thanks, everybody. Maybe a last round of a hand raise for anybody. We do have a couple minutes left. I don't want to cut you short. These things were always a little bit easier to do in person when we could just kind of mill around and continue discussing. But unless there are any other comments, we can see you guys later on.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Again, I'll send you an email to the email address that you used to register for this meeting. I will send you the presentation. I'll send you the video recording. If you know somebody that wanted to be here but couldn't, they'll be able to watch this later and also provide their feedback on the link that Eric shared on the chat. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Everybody have a great night. Stay safe.